Most men don't realize this. You were never ignored. You were never invisible. You just didn't understand what was happening right in front of you. There has been, more than once, a woman in your life who tried to get your attention. Not loudly, not directly, not in the way you expected. And because of that, you missed it. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you were looking for the wrong signals. You were waiting for something obvious, something clear, something undeniable. But women don't operate like that. They don't chase. They don't announce. They don't force attention. They create it, subtly, strategically, over time. And here's the part most men never recover from. By the time you realize what she was doing, she's already gone. Not angry, not emotional, just gone. Because in her mind, you already made your decision. You didn't see her. And a woman who isn't seen doesn't stay. This is why some men go through life believing women aren't interested in me, when the truth is far more brutal. They were interested, more than once. You just weren't aware enough to notice. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this works. Not vague advice, not guesswork, but 8 specific behaviors that women use to place themselves in your world without ever chasing you. And more importantly, I'm going to show you how a disciplined man responds without losing control, without chasing, without lowering his value. Because once you see these patterns, you don't just notice women differently, you move differently. Most men don't miss signals because they're stupid. They miss them because they were trained to look for the wrong things. From the beginning, you were taught a very simple model of attraction. If she likes you, she'll show it. If she's interested, she'll make it clear. If she wants you, you'll know. And that sounds logical. It sounds fair. It sounds like the kind of system that should exist in a clean, predictable world. But reality doesn't work like that. Because men and women don't signal interest the same way. A man moves toward what he wants. He approaches. He speaks. He escalates. Even when he's unsure, he still moves forward. Because his entire behavioral system is built around pursuit. Direct. Linear. Obvious. But a woman's system is different. She doesn't move toward you. She adjusts her environment so that you move toward her. She doesn't force attention. She creates conditions where attention naturally happens. And if you've never been trained to see that, it looks like nothing is happening. This is where most men fail. They stand in the middle of a situation where signals are being sent, and they wait for something louder, something clearer, something that fits their expectation of how attraction should look. And while they're waiting, they miss everything. Because the signals were never meant to be loud. They were meant to be deniable. That's the entire design. A woman signals in a way that protects her from rejection. If you respond, it was intentional. If you don't, it was nothing. No risk, no exposure, no loss. Which means every signal she sends exists in a kind of gray zone, where it only becomes real if you're aware enough to recognize it. And most men aren't. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack calibration. They don't notice patterns. They don't track repetition. They don't observe behavior across time. They react to moments instead of reading systems. And attraction is a system. Not one action. Not one signal. Not one interaction. A pattern. A sequence. A build-up. If you only look for isolated events, you will always miss it. Because nothing she does on its own is meant to be enough. It's the accumulation that matters. The repetition. The subtle consistency of her placing herself in your awareness. And here's the mistake that destroys most men. Even when they start noticing, they react too early. They chase the first signal. They overinterpret a moment. They break the frame before the pattern is even complete. And in doing that, They turn something that was naturally developing into something forced. That's where attraction dies. Because a woman doesn't want to feel chased before she's been understood. She wants to feel seen without having to expose herself. And that requires something most men never develop. Control. Not control over her. Control over yourself. The ability to observe without reacting. To notice without rushing. To understand what's happening before you decide what to do. That's what separates a man who misses everything from a man who sees everything. And once you reach that point, the signals don't confuse you anymore. They become predictable, readable, almost obvious, but only if you slow down enough to actually see them. If you're starting to recognize yourself in this, good. That means you're paying attention now. And what you're about to see next is where it becomes impossible to ignore. Now that you understand why most men miss it, we can finally talk about what to look for. Not guesses, not vague body language advice, but specific patterns. The kind that repeat, the kind that reveal intention, without ever saying a word. Sign 1. She places herself where you can see her. This is where everything begins. Before any conversation, before any interaction, she makes sure you can see her. Not directly, not in front of you, but just close enough to enter your awareness. Across the room, at the edge of your vision, in places where your eyes naturally drift. And here's what most men don't realize. She's not standing there by accident. She chose that position. Not because it's comfortable, not because it's convenient, but because it puts her in your line of sight. This is what most people miss. They think attraction starts when words are exchanged. It doesn't. It starts when presence is established. She wants your brain to register her existence first, to create familiarity before anything happens. So the next time you see her, she's not a stranger anymore. She's already someone your mind recognizes. Now here's where you need to be careful. A weak man sees this and reacts immediately. He stares. He approaches too fast. He breaks the distance before the moment develops. A disciplined man does something different. He notices, but he doesn't rush. He tracks. He asks himself, is this repeating? Because one moment means nothing. But patterns mean everything. If she keeps appearing in your visual field, different times, same positioning, same subtle proximity, that's not coincidence. That's intention. And your job isn't to chase it. Your job is to recognize it without disturbing it. Sign 2. Her energy changes when you're near. This one is harder to fake because it's not about position. It's about reaction. She's with her friends, talking normally, laughing at a normal level. Nothing unusual. And then you enter the space. You don't say anything. You don't even look at her. But something shifts. Her voice becomes more animated. Her laughter gets louder. Her presence becomes noticeable. Not directly toward you, but impossible to ignore. Most men experience this and completely misunderstand it. They think, she's just loud. She's just expressive. She's like that with everyone. No. Watch carefully. Because the difference is in the timing. If the shift happens when you enter and fades when you're gone, that's not personality. That's calibration. Her behavior adjusting to your presence. And the important part, she's probably not even aware of it. This is not strategy in her mind. It's instinct. Her system detecting someone she's interested in and amplifying her signal without asking for permission. Now again, this is where most men fail. They feel the shift and they react emotionally. They get excited. They over-engage. They move too fast. And they destroy the dynamic before it has time to build. A disciplined man does the opposite. He stays grounded. He observes the change, but he doesn't attach meaning too quickly. He watches for consistency, because one reaction can be random, but repeated reactions in the same pattern, that's when it becomes real. That's when you know you're not imagining it. And once you see that clearly, everything else starts to reveal itself. At this point, if you're paying attention, you've already started to see things differently. Not just what people do, but why they do it. And this is where the signals become harder to ignore. Because now, they're not just about presence anymore. They're about presentation. Sign 3. She performs subtle grooming when you're watching. This is one of the most misunderstood signals, because it looks like nothing. She adjusts her hair. She touches her neck. She fixes something that doesn't need fixing. Small movements, almost invisible. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss all of it. But here's what matters. It's not the action. It's the timing. These movements don't happen randomly. They happen when you're near. When you've just looked in her direction. When she knows, or senses, that she might be seen. And in that moment, she draws attention to specific parts of herself. Her hair, her lips, her posture. Not in an obvious way, but in a way your brain picks up, without you realizing it. This is what makes it powerful. Because it doesn't feel like she's trying. It feels natural, effortless. But it's not random. It's selective behavior, triggered by your presence. Now listen carefully. This is where most men lose control. They see these signals, and they immediately assume meaning. She's into me. She wants me to approach. So they react. Too fast. Too eager. Too certain. And in doing that, they expose something she wasn't ready to face yet. Because this stage isn't about action. It's about awareness. A disciplined man understands this. He doesn't chase micro signals. He studies them. He watches for repetition. Because one gesture means nothing but patterns of behavior, especially when they align with your presence. That's where truth begins to show itself. Sign 4. She speaks into your space without speaking to you. This is where it gets intelligent. Because now, she's not just signaling visually. She's using information. You're nearby, not in her conversation, not part of the group, just close enough to hear. And suddenly, she says something specific, something that stands out, a topic you're interested in, a detail about her life, a story designed to be heard, not directed at you, but not accidental either. She's speaking to someone else, but the message is meant for you. This is one of the most strategic signals you will ever encounter, because it gives her total safety. If you ignore it, nothing happened. She was just talking. But if you respond, the door is already open. And she didn't have to risk anything to create that opening. Now this is where weak men make a mistake. They take the bait too quickly. They jump into the conversation. They try to impress. They try to prove they belong there. And in doing that, they turn something smooth into something forced. A disciplined man doesn't do that. He listens, but he doesn't rush to enter. He lets the signal develop. He allows space for a second cue, because real interest doesn't show itself once. It shows itself repeatedly. And when she continues to project into your space, again, and again, and again, that's when engagement becomes natural. Not forced, not awkward, not rushed. And that difference is what separates a man who gets ignored from a man who gets chosen. Up to this point, everything you've seen has been subtle, easy to dismiss, easy to ignore. But now, we move into something different. Because these next signals require investment, time, energy, adjustment. And people don't invest like this without a reason. Sign 5. She starts appearing in your world repeatedly. This is where coincidence stops being coincidence. You have routines, places you go, times you show up, patterns you follow without thinking. And suddenly, she's there. At first, it feels random. Same coffee shop, same gym, same street. Nothing unusual. But then it happens again. And again. Different day. Same place. Different context. Same presence. And eventually, something in your mind starts to ask, why do I keep seeing her? This is where most men dismiss it. They tell themselves, it's just chance. It's a small world. It doesn't mean anything. But here's the truth most men avoid. People don't rearrange their time for things they don't care about. And when a woman begins to appear inside your routines consistently, she's not drifting into your world. She's aligning with it, adjusting her schedule, shifting her patterns, creating overlap, so that interaction becomes inevitable. Not forced. Inevitable. Now listen carefully. This is where weak men misinterpret everything. They assume, she's always around, I should make a move. So they rush. They approach too early. They force conversation. They break the natural buildup. And the entire dynamic collapses. Because they didn't understand what was happening. A disciplined man sees this differently. He doesn't react to presence. He tracks consistency. He lets the pattern confirm itself. Because when someone shows up once, it's nothing. Twice, still nothing. But when it becomes a rhythm, that's when you know. It's no longer random. And once you know that, you don't chase the moment. You let the moment come to you. Sign 6. She breaks the normal rules to talk to you. This is where subtlety ends. And intention becomes visible. Because now, she's stepping outside of what's expected. Every social interaction has a script. Short, predictable, safe. Hi, how are you? Have a good day. That's how strangers move through the world. Without friction. But when a woman wants more than that, she breaks the script. She says something unnecessary. Something that doesn't belong in the situation. A comment about your jacket. A random question. A small joke. Where silence would have been normal. It's subtle. But it's intentional. Because she didn't need to say anything. And yet, she chose to. That choice is the signal. Now most men completely misread this moment. They get excited. They think, this is my chance. And they immediately try to take control of the interaction. They talk too much. They try to impress. They try to extend it beyond what it naturally was. And in doing that, they lose the advantage. Because the power in that moment was never in what she said. It was in the fact that she created the opening. A disciplined man understands this. He doesn't overreact to a single interaction. He meets it calmly, naturally, without trying to force more out of it than what it is, because he knows something most men don't. If she broke the script once, she'll break it again. And when it happens again, that's when you know it wasn't random. That's when the pattern becomes real. And once it becomes real, you're no longer guessing. You're reading. And that changes everything. Up to this point, you've been looking at signals that happen around you. Things you can see. Things you can hear. But now, we're moving into something deeper. Because these next 2 signals don't just happen near you. They happen because of you. Sign 7. Her entire behavior shifts when you enter the space. This is the one most men feel, but never understand. You walk into a place, a gym, a cafe, a room full of people. You don't say anything. You don't interact. You just arrive. And something changes. Subtly, but noticeably. Someone sits up straighter. Energy in the room lifts slightly. Laughter becomes sharper, more expressive, more alive. And you feel it. You don't know why, but you feel it. Most men ignore this. They assume it's random. They think, maybe it's just the vibe of the place. No. What you're feeling is response. Because when a woman is interested, she doesn't just signal toward you. Her entire system adjusts around you. Her posture opens. Her tone changes. Her expressiveness increases. Not in a way that points directly at you, but in a way that becomes impossible to miss. And here's the part that's going to stay with you. This has happened to you before. More than once. You've walked into places where the energy felt different, and you never questioned it. You never asked, who is reacting to me right now? Because you weren't trained to look for that. You were trained to look for direct attention, eye contact, smiles, obvious signals. But this is indirect influence, and it's far more powerful. Now this is where most men fail again. They feel the shift, and they let it affect them. They become reactive. They seek validation from it. They chase the energy. A disciplined man does the opposite. He stays grounded. He registers the change, but he doesn't let it control him. Because awareness without control is still weakness. And the moment you start reacting to every shift around you, you lose the frame completely. So you observe it. You acknowledge it. But you remain unchanged. That's what makes you dangerous in that environment. Sign 8. She expands your presence even when you're not there. This is the final layer. And it's the one most men never see. Because it doesn't happen in front of them. It happens behind the scenes. In conversations you're not part of. In rooms you're not in. She talks about you, mentions your name, brings you into discussions where you don't belong. Not directly, not obviously, but enough that your presence starts to spread through friends, through coworkers, through mutual connections. And suddenly, you start hearing about her from people who shouldn't even know. You're connected, and you think, that's strange. It's random. It doesn't mean anything. But it does. Because attention doesn't expand without intention. She's placing you inside her social world, so that even when she's not there, the idea of her is still reaching you. This is what most men never understand. Attraction isn't just built in moments. It's built in networks, repetition, familiarity, presence over time. And she's creating all of that without ever directly asking for you. Now here's the final mistake men make. When they realize this, they get overwhelmed. They start overthinking everything. Every mention, every interaction, every coincidence. And they lose clarity. But a disciplined man simplifies it. He doesn't obsess. He doesn't chase meaning in every detail. He looks for one thing only: pattern. Because if her name appears once, it's nothing. Twice, still nothing. But when it keeps returning, in different places, through different people, that's when it becomes real. And when it becomes real, you don't question it anymore. You recognize it. And now, you understand something most men never will. Signals are not isolated. They're layered, connected, built over time, until they become impossible to ignore. The only question is, are you aware enough to see them before they disappear again? At this point, you've seen the signals. You understand the patterns. You know what's actually happening in situations you used to ignore. And this is exactly where most men fail. Not at the beginning, but right here. Because awareness alone is not enough. In fact, for most men, awareness is where they start destroying everything. The first mistake: they react too early. They see one signal, and they jump to a conclusion. She's interested. She wants me to approach. So they move. Fast. Direct. Uncalibrated. And in that moment, they collapse everything that was building naturally. Because they didn't understand the process. Signals are not invitations. They are tests of awareness. And the moment you treat a signal like a green light, you show her you don't understand the game at all. The second mistake, they start chasing the energy. They feel the shift, the attention, the subtle reactions. And instead of staying grounded, they lean into it. They try to hold it, extend it, control it. But here's the truth. The moment you chase attention, you lower your value. Because now, you're not observing anymore. You're seeking. And seeking is always felt, even when you try to hide it. The third mistake, they overthink every detail, every look, every word, every coincidence. They try to analyze it all. Was that a sign? Did that mean something? Should I act now? And in doing that, they lose the one thing that actually matters: clarity. Because when your mind is reactive, you stop seeing patterns. You start chasing moments. And moments are unreliable. The fourth mistake, they break the frame. They start strong, calm, composed, observing. But the moment they feel interest, they shift. They become more available, more eager, more expressive than they should be. And that shift is exactly what kills attraction. Because attraction isn't built on how much you give. It's built on how well you hold yourself. Consistency, control, presence that doesn't fluctuate based on external validation. And this is where the real difference appears between a man who misses everything and a man who sees everything and still loses it. The first man is unaware. The second man is undisciplined. And discipline is the only thing that turns awareness into power. A disciplined man doesn't rush signals. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't overanalyze every moment. And he never breaks his frame just because someone showed interest. He stays the same before the signal, during the signal, after the signal. And that stability is what makes him different. Because in a world where most men react, he remains in control. And once you reach that level, something strange happens. You stop worrying about whether she's interested or not. Because you're no longer trying to force anything. You're just observing and allowing things to reveal themselves. And that's the point most men never reach. But once you do, you don't just see the signals differently. You become the man they were meant for in the first place. At the end of all this, there's something you need to understand. None of this works if you're trying to force it. Signals were never meant to be chased. They were meant to be seen, recognized, understood by the kind of man who doesn't need to react to everything he notices. Because the truth is simple. A woman doesn't want to be pursued by a man who just discovered her interest. She wants to be recognized by a man who was already in control. And that changes everything. Most men spend their lives looking for clearer signs, stronger signals, more obvious proof. But clarity was never the problem. Awareness was. You weren't ignored. You weren't invisible. You just weren't looking in the right way. And now, you are. So the next time you walk into a room, don't rush. Don't chase. Don't try to make something happen. Just observe. Watch who places themselves in your world. Notice who adjusts when you're near. Pay attention to what repeats. Because repetition is where truth reveals itself. And when you finally see it clearly, don't lose control trying to respond to it. Because the moment you react out of need, you become just another man who noticed too late. But if you stay grounded, if you remain consistent, if you let things develop, Without forcing them, you don't chase signals anymore. You become the man signals are sent to. And that is where everything changes. If something in this video made you see your past differently, you're not alone. Every man who learns this remembers a moment he didn't understand at the time. Drop it in the comments. The moment you missed, the pattern you now recognize. You'll realize very quickly, you weren't the only one. And if you want to see the world with this level of clarity, stay here. Because this is what we do. Not louder, not more emotional, just clearer.